Welcome to the Real Mummy podcast, where we tackle the real, the raw, and the rewarding sides of motherhood. I'm your host, Lucy Dalton, and today we're diving into one of the biggest parenting challenges, flying with your kids. If the thought of boarding a plane with your little ones makes you break out in a sweat, stay tuned, help is on the way. Today's guest is Jeanette, an incredible mum who's practically a pro at long-haul flights with her two young children. From Perth to Dublin and back again, she's done it all and lived to tell the tale. Jeanette is here to share her top survival tips and reassure you that flying with kids isn't as scary as it seems. We're talking smart packing, mastering layovers, dealing with air pressure, and keeping your kids entertained for hours. Imagine turning those dreaded 17-hour flights into smooth, enjoyable journeys. Sound too good to be true? Stick around because Jeanette's stories and advice will transform your travel experience. Ever struggled with navigating airport chaos solo with kids in a tow? Or worried about keeping your toddler calm during turbulence? Curious about ensuring your baby gets enough sleep on a night flight? Jeanette has been there, done that, and she's ready to spell all her game-changing hats. So fasten your seatbelts and get ready for some high-flying tips that will make your next family trip a breeze. Whether you're planning your dream holiday or visiting family across the globe, the Real Mummy podcast is here to help you fly with confidence. Now let's take off. Remember to subscribe, rate, and leave a review if you find our tips helpful. Now let's dive into our chat with Jeanette. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. So how old are your kids now, Jeanette?
So my oldest, he is 6 and youngest is 2.5.
Fun age.
Yeah, it should be 3 in May. Yeah. Oh, definitely. You know all about it.
Oh my God. We were just talking about like this. Yeah, they're so second kids. They're a different breed. So.
Oh, definitely. That's for sure.
So you've flown 4 separate times. What ages were they when you flew?
So, when I first flew, Patrick was 5 months and then I stayed quite a while. So he was 7 months then on return. Cora, she was 1 when she first went. Then when she was about 1.5, Patrick flew at 2 and then again at 4 and then 5 on his return type thing. So yeah, quite a range of ages.
Yeah, that's why it's perfect because, like I always find flying with a baby to me was the easiest, 100%.
Absolutely.
And older kids, it's that kind of once they start walking up to 3, I reckon is
crawling, walking. Yeah.
So I should have mentioned, so obviously we're in Australia and the flights you've been doing are from Perth to Dublin, aren't they?
Yeah.
So can you just so how long is it from Perth to Dubai? Is it Dubai usually you fly or?
So I had started with Dubai. So I tend to now go Doha. But yeah, so basically you're looking at about 11.5 hours to Doha, Dubai, and then usually about a 2.5 hour stopover and then fly on then to Dublin for about another 7.5 hours. So yeah, I had been doing Dubai, but I just find it so busy and chaotic and just because it's always a short stopover and I didn't find them all that helpful either when I was on my own, struggling with a child and luggage, and only for Good Samaritans helping me out, I definitely would have missed my connecting flight, I felt. So I do find Doha a lot easier in that sense. But yeah, so it's a pretty long flight.
Because is it Doha that's got the playground in the airport?
Yes. Yeah, it does. And I mean, like that, again, the stopovers are only 2.5 hours, but it's great to have those wee playgrounds and just even telling the kids about it beforehand so they're excited for that. It definitely cuts out a bit of that stress. And even though it's a massive airport and sometimes you do have quite far to go, I still find you have time to have that play, burn off some energy and still then comfortably get to your gate on time to get your next flight.
That's really good because we've obviously done it twice and I've only ever flown Emirates Dubai, and Mark's flown with Qatar on his own, and he was saying that about Doha, and I was like, honestly, that would the little playground there, like you said, it's enough bribery to almost purposely book with them and be oh yeah, kids, at the next one you get to play around for a little bit before we get on another aeroplane because it's a long journey.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do like what you have done, going Dubai and then staying over. But obviously, I wouldn't do that if I was on my own. I just don't think yeah, I just don't think I'd be confident enough then, having to check into a hotel and yeah, I probably would, to be fair, but maybe not just yet
It's
with Cora at her age.
It was quite daunting. So we did it the second time, because I think that's the thing when Mark was like, oh, like we head back to Ireland, and like Maeve was only like 14 months and then Maisie was just gone 3. And I was like, oh, like I wasn't looking forward to the flight with a 14-month-old, because I was like, and Maeve being Maeve, who does not sit still ever, I was dreading it. And then he was like, oh, someone I know has got like a long stopover. It's like a 30-hour stopover in Dubai, and you can just check into like a hotel, and just kind of sleep in an airport hotel, and then so that's how he managed to sell me. And it was good, but then it does get expensive then, because then you start adding into a hotel, and then even the travel there and back. Like it's good, but it's got its downs as well.
Pros and cons. Yeah, of course.
Definitely.
And I think that's a lot of the time when we're wanting to go, we don't want to not waste that time, but we want that extra day with your family type thing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's the thing. It does take a bit of way, and then by the time it's like 2 extra days there, and if you do it on the way back, and it's hard.
Exactly.
So did you do night flights? Did you try and book night flights with the kids?
Yeah, always. And even for myself as well, I always find that was better. Fly out of Perth, and the Doha flight's very similar to the Dubai. They both leave within half an hour of other. So yeah, they go out around 10ish at night. So it's perfect. Especially the kids. Generally they'll sleep and that's what I say to people at home as well. It's not like we've just had that extremely long flight. You've got 2 hours to Perth, and the same then when I get home, we have another 2 hours from Dublin. So but yeah, they'll generally sleep a bit on the way up to Perth, and then that night flight. So really, yourself, like once they kind of get the food out of the way, they dim the lights, the kids are already tired, so it's great. They thankfully, I mean, mine aren't the quietest of children, but they'll be ready for sleep, and they do sleep, and they do, I can't actually remember exact times, but I feel like they slept definitely more than 7 hours, 7 to 8, maybe even 9 hours type thing.
Yeah.
Whether they might wake a little bit in between,
Because we thought it was just like luck that our kids did it. Like obviously Maisie was only a baby the first time and then the second time, and they did. And I just thought it was pure luck. But then after speaking to you, I was like, okay, like I think, because someone recommended it, like you get a night flight. I remember getting to the airport, we had dinner like as normal, then put their pajamas on and let them just run like crazy round by the gate.
Yeah.
And I could see people looking at it. I was like, oh God. And I'm like, seriously, just let them get it all out of the system now.
Exactly. Absolutely. And that's why, I don't know if I ever did 2 stops with Patrick, but I did nearly think that even, having the 2 stops, at least then they're burning off that energy running in the airport. But no, definitely the night flights and like that, I always have them in their jammies.
Yeah.
And just, once they turn the lights off on the plane, like it is just so, it's the mood is set, and they sleep well. And that's I know some of your questions later we'll talk about bassinets and stuff, but no, they so far so good. Anyhow, they've always slept on that night flight, and then they're obviously waking up kind of earlier than they would to get on to the connecting flight, but then that means they're tired again for it, so they've always slept then for another couple of hours on it, and even it's only 7.5 hours, so if you've slept for 2 or 3 of those hours, then it really is so much more manageable.
It really is. And for us as well, to even like for us, just even if we don't sleep that much, it's just to have a little, okay, they're asleep. I think that's the thing. I was dreading that they wouldn't sleep. And I was like, how am I going to cope if they don't sleep and they're going to be even cranked? Because kids, when they don't sleep, mine are like terrible when they're overtired. They're like, they're like little monsters. It's horrible. So, but yeah, like, so I'll go back to the bassinet flight. So did you use the bassinet when the kids were babies?
Yeah, so I did, and I remember with Patrick it working well, but he was a better sleeper, and he also transferred a lot better. Yeah. So with him, I actually forgot about it till I was preparing for this. I had a cozy go. What did I Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so yeah, I put it on over the bassinet and he slept away. And I mean, I think we obviously were lucky there wasn't that much turbulence
Hmm.
and, you know, he had a great sleep in it. But then I have found over some of the flights, like some of the pilots in particular seem to love that turbulence button and the seatbelts. And so then having to take them out is just, I mean, I think Patrick was fine and still slept on me, but Cora, no, as soon as you'd lift her, that was her awake and a lot harder then to resettle.
Yeah.
So I think then with Cora, I still got the bassinet seat for some of the flights anyhow, as it is handy to have the leg room. But and it's handy to have the bassinet, even just to put your tray or whatever when you finish your food.
Yeah.
You know, even if
Yeah.
they're not in it, it is
Yeah.
handy to have that space. But yeah, with Cora, it just didn't work so well. Yeah, she was too light a sleeper, so if you took her out, she was awake. So I found with her the carrier was so much better. And yeah, she slept so well in it and fed so well. I do think I remember one of them, you know, them saying about, oh, a seatbelt for her. And I'm like, but she's attached to me type thing.
Yeah.
So I think I ended up like putting her seatbelt, like she was still on me. I think I put it around, you know, something ridiculous just to keep them happy. But I was like, I'm not taking her out of this carrier. She's happy, she's sleeping, she's feeding type thing. And then after that, I actually haven't even booked the bassinet seat, just because then you're likely to be beside other children who might cry.
Yeah.
And yeah, the last time then with Cora, we just, you know, I just booked seats, yeah, further back type thing. And yeah, you definitely don't have as much space, and it's more awkward when it's the dinner and stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, with Cora as well, she kept trying to like lie down on the ground or play there. And one of the flights were actually quite harsh, and they're like, she can't be there type thing. And I was like, oh, well, you know. So I felt then at least if I didn't have that space, she didn't have that option, so it was just easier to keep her more contained in the smaller space.
I agree, because it was like for Maisie, we got the bassinet when she was 5 months, and it was actually great, because like I had her in the carrier when we got on the plane, and same thing, she was already asleep before we took off, and then I just managed to put the extender around her belly in the carrier. But like, yeah, some of them are like, you have to take him out the carrier. And I was like, this is safer than the seatbelt. Like what, you know, like
Absolutely.
it's crazy. And then I ended up like, we put her in the bassinet and then had the cozy go. But we kind of, we put her in a little sleeping bag, like at home, and we had like a little portable little white noise that we put in there just to try and her little bunny or whatever. So to come and mimic, you know, being at home. And
exactly, being at home.
Yeah, and she literally slept the whole time. I think she actually slept like the whole 10 hours of that flight when she was a baby.
Yeah.
And then we had the cozy go, which was great. And then we'd have to lift her out, but she slept through. But I remember there was a family next to us on the row next to us, and they put their baby in the bassinet, probably same age, and they didn't have like a cover or anything. And it was, you know, it's like right under those TVs. So it was so bright. And they were trying to cover it with blankets and everything like that. So I always recommend to people, like, if you're planning on, you want your baby to sleep in a bassinet, a cozy go is really handy.
I did read just recently actually that it's like Irish in Perth, one of those groups, and someone had said that they actually made them take the cozy go down.
Really?
I thought, oh my goodness, yeah. I think, well, Qatar, I think in particular, are getting a lot more strict about all the extras.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're thinking, like, you know, what the reasoning in that was, the cozy go. But yeah, even the plane pals and stuff, I've seen a lot of people saying, whereas a lot of people used to say, yeah, you get away with it, and I know we got away with it before, but people saying no, they've been asking them to take them down even though the child's asleep on top of it.
It's crazy because you're like surely like this tiny bit of sleep and it's all safe and everything like that, but yeah. And then we used a bassinet with Maeve, and I thought, oh, I'll try when she was 14 months, because she was the same. She'd sleep really well at home. So I was like, perfect, she'll sleep. So I booked the bassinet flights there and back. And then when we got there, the lady looked at Maeve, because my kids are really tall.
She's so tall, yeah.
And she was like, she can't go in there. I was like, I literally measured her. She will fit. And I laid her down. I was like, look, she fits exactly, like a little bit tight, but she was going to fit. Yeah. So I was like, she'll sleep, And the lady was like, I'm not sure. And then she's like, we'll just see how she goes. And then as soon as we were up in the air and stuff, we sat her in it. And then there's May standing up in the bassinet, clapping, waving at everyone. And the stewardess was like, no, that's not safe. And she took it off us. And I was like, oh, now what? Oh, so yeah. And then we tried other ones and they were like, nope, she's too big. And then I didn't like the bassinet row because like you can't put the armrests up.
Exactly. And the TV as well, having to try and pull it up.
It was actually, and they don't let you put stuff down at your feet anyway. So it was kind of like a wasted space. So for us, I was like,
Absolutely.
okay. So then I think one of the flights we ended up just getting like a 3-row in the back, but it was handy because we could just put all
Yeah.
the armrests up and just like we laid the kids between us, and it actually worked out better. So
That's exactly the last time or the first time I went with Patrick and Cora on my own. I got the very back seat, like, and I think it was only two, and then there was the space there where the third seat would have been.
yeah,
And although we were right next to the toilets, but it was just nice. We were kind of in our own little secluded space. It felt like we weren't annoying anyone,
yeah.
and they were fit to the two of them lay straight across, on top of me type thing. So yeah, it definitely worked out better than the bassinet.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's like I said, pros and cons, but I think it depends on your kids.
Yeah,
And yeah, like if they're light
absolutely.
sleepers, with all the turbulence, like
Precisely. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And like that you said, there was a family beside me and they were like, no, he won't fit, he won't fit. And they were like, he will. But even Cora, actually, I think that was she would have been a year and a half. And she was a year, I can't remember actually if I got it on the way back, but yeah, she just about fitted in, and she's not overly nowhere near as tall as
yeah.
your girls, like, but yeah, I just think, yeah, no, pros and cons, like you say, and just kind of weigh it up.
Yeah, and they're good because like you can just ring the airlines and just ask for a bassinet seat in a flight, and they are very
Yeah.
good like that. So and how
Yeah,
did you go with
absolutely.
like taking off and landing? How did the kids go with the ears popping and all those kind of things?
So thankfully it hasn't been too bad. Always made them make sure they were either sucking, bottle, dummy, breast, or eating. Even now, like I'd have make sure they're sucking on a sweet or a lolly. Like I would still do that myself always. There was, I think it might have been Cora's first time. I'm not sure, but her being her, wouldn't do, what I wanted, wouldn't feed or whatever. And so she did start crying, and it was obvious that it was the ears, it was just at
Yeah.
that time. And yeah, I think it was because we were in that back seat. So again, it felt like we weren't really disturbing that many people. And I know someone across, we're like, oh, it must be the ears. But thankfully, when she got upset, she was happy then to breastfeed, so she
Yes.
was fine then. One of the times, because Patrick's obviously had so mmany issues with his ears, I was really worried. I think it was after maybe all his operations. So I did actually buy, they were what were they called? Little things that you can stick into your ears. You can get them as adults as well. They're like earplugs,
Oh yeah.
ear planes, I think they're called. Yeah. And it's to help like reduce the pressure type thing. So I did put them in for him and it was all fine. Look, it might have been fine anyhow, but I was just so worried. I think it was after he'd had grommets put in and then he had perforated eardrums, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But no, thankfully, yeah, that one time that she did cry, yeah, she was happy enough then to feed because she was upset and that's sorted it out. But I definitely think, yeah, if they're eating or drinking, yeah, they'll be fine.
I was so nervous for it because you hear so many scary stories, and honestly, that was probably the bit I was most daunted about. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I just gave my girls, like I said, I had to put them on the boob, gave them a dummy, gave them a bottle,
Yeah,
and they're actually fine. Like we haven't
exactly.
haven't had an issue.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the things you worry about the
God.
most.
It is like it's crazy, and then it is, and that's probably I suppose then for you it's like oh another relief. Thank God that was fine. It actually was nowhere near as bad as you thought.
100%. How about like all the luggage and things like that? So did you find like, that's another thing I was stressed about was like what I could take on the plane, what I couldn't. Do they get like a luggage allowance and like a nappy bag? How did you go? Because you obviously flew a different airline.
Yeah, well, I've find them all great in that sense, to be fair. Like I've always, I know I try my best to travel light, but it's so hard. So yeah, I've like there's photos of me heading off on my own, with Cora strapped to me and Patrick on his own little pull along luggage thing, and I've got my carry-on case and a laptop case and a big jacket and a baby bag, and it's ridiculous. And people probably think, what is she doing? But look at yeah, they're fantastic. Like I know with Patrick, he was bottle fed, so I had the whole. I think I used like a tote bag or like a nearly like a Coles chill bag type
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And I had all his bottles like pre-made. or not pre-made, but the water in it.
Yeah.
And so then at the airport, I could just say, that's all the water for the baby bottles type things. That was all together, it could go through together. And yeah, then I would have obviously my baby bag packed, and never did anyone ever measure, weigh anything or anything like that. And like that with baby food or pouches as well, would always just say, yeah, that's all the baby stuff. And yeah, everyone was always fantastic. The hardest though was definitely Dublin. Coming back, was with Patrick on my own actually, and obviously you're already so upset, and they started, I think I had to literally I remember I had far too much stuff, and we had literally just packed everything, like crammed everything in. And then they made me start taking like bottles and stuff out, and I was ready to cry because I thought, how am I going to get everything back in? And I remember them literally took Patrick off me so that I could do it. And I was like, are you for real? Like, I didn't have to do this in any other airport. Why do I have to do this here?
Yeah.
So yeah, Dublin was definitely a hassle with regards to the baby bottles. And yeah, but luggage wise, absolutely fine. They basically allow anything goes, or I'm just like in that mindset of, if they dare say anything to me, I'd be like, well, do you want to be traveling with your children?
I think
like, don't even dare. I bring them whenever I want. Do you want to melt down? But yeah. I know some of your questions you'll ask about different things like strollers and stuff, but no. So definitely you can take whatever, like water, they will not restrict. Like I know for Patrick that time, I also took like an extra flask, which was good. I did need it. They do tend to drink more. I think the flights can leave them quite thirsty. And the powder, I had the baby formula. I had a few tins with me, but I also then had the pre-packed, or not pre-packed, I put them into the wee containers. Measured out, exactly. And no, they were fantastic. I know I didn't get them too, but they can heat up water and stuff for you.
I found I was most nervous for that. I remember that's what I messaged you about, was the bottles and the formula, because Maisie was formula fed, and I was most nervous for that. And you're okay. And and I remember so worried because they give you like the liquids restrictions and stuff like that. And they were actually fine. And I took a thermos like you to warm up the bottles on the plane. And that was the best thing in a cafe. I just went there to fill it up and I took it on. But there was the family next to us that didn't do that, and they were waiting for the stewardess to kind of warm it up, and they were so busy. So then the baby's crying and is hungry, and I was like, oh, thank God, so that was really handy to do. So have everything ready to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you mentioned.
Well, I was lucky. Patrick took them at room temperature in a house, so I didn't need them heated up. But definitely, it's better to, like you said, try not to have to rely on anyone, because you just don't know, especially when they get so busy.
Yeah. And you mentioned there about a stroller. So did you kind of take a car seat or a stroller or anything like that on the flights?
Yeah, so I've never taken a car seat, just because usually on my own, and I just, I'm not very tall, 5 foot. I just don't think I could physically manage, just even in the airports, I just thought, no, it'd be too hard.
Yeah.
But stroller, yes. I had, not until actually the last time, I think, I had been going with the carriers the whole time, which was great. But when I had, the two of them and the carrier, and Cora like isn't as small, so I did I was exhausted going through Doha. So the last time I got a little GB pocket thing or something, a really small little travel pram that you can fold up. It was literally I had been researching them for ages. Wanted to get the red baby skip, but couldn't. It wasn't. Sorry, Cora has decided to go.
That's okay.
To go it behind me instead of going to the other one.
That's okay.
Off you go, Cora, quickly. And then it wasn't going to get here in time, so I was looking at a few different options, but my friend ended up having this one. She was like, yeah, take it. But I didn't have a travel bag, so I was a bit worried, because I thought, you definitely need it in a bag. So I literally put it into a tote bag.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, so whenever we were checking in, I just said, and I'm bringing this on the flight. And they were like, oh, does it fold up small enough? And I was like, yeah, definitely. And they were like, have you got a bag? And I was like, yeah. So then whenever I was about to board, I just folded it all up and put it in the tote bag and put it on my shoulder. So nobody even
They were none the
passed any
wiser.
remarks on what it was.
Yeah.
None the wiser, exactly. Whereas I have seen people, if they say, no, I don't, then there's like, oh, you need a bag, and then they make them check it on. So I always just say, yeah, agree and smile, and then, ask for forgiveness later if you need to.
It kind of defeats the purpose though. We were the same. We didn't really take one to check in because I was like, well, it's handy to have around the airport. And I know some airports have them so you can use them, but like A, if they're all gone, or B, you have to sometimes check them before you even go through the gates, and then you've got all this stuff. So we used one last time, and for us it was great. Like we had the two, and like I said, Maeve was a bit too big for a carrier. She did go one sometimes. But most of the time, like she just wanted to look around, and then be nosy. And ours was the same. It folded up. We had the Silver Cross one, and it folded up into like a with a little bag on it. And just pulled along like a tiny little suitcase, and it was great, really handy.
Perfect. Yeah, well, actually, Doha, I know Dubai had started doing the prams again after COVID, but Doha still hadn't. So, and then as well, sometimes they can be absolutely filthy,
Yes,
so I just wouldn't want to rely, and then be like, oh. But yeah, so it was a godsend just for being on my own and just having that weight off me. But in saying that, then that meant that I couldn't use like a trolley luggage thing.
Yeah.
You go see Paddy, please. Good girl. So it didn't mean that I couldn't use that in the airport, but I mean, so again, pros and cons. But I definitely find it handy.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes you just want them off you as well. When they've been sat on you on a flight, you just want them off you. So,
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Just that wee bit of space. Absolutely.
Is there any other kind of like essential items, for to pack on a flight that someone's going on a long haul flight that you would say you really should pack these things? Like, is there any kind of other things you would?
So I'm just trying to think what all. The carrier for me was probably one of the best things, but I know, like I've said that to some of my friends and they're like, oh, they're just not really into carriers, and I mean, it suited me great because like she could feed away on the carrier and stuff, but that's, not everyone can do that, So the carrier for me was definitely, and just being hands-free, especially when you're on your own, being hands-free when getting on the flight. Then I'm just trying to think what else. So just things like extra nappies, I found, I don't know if they both did. One of them definitely pooed a lot more.
Yeah.
Probably because they were drinking a lot more. And just, change of clothes for obviously quite a few changes of clothes for them, but definitely for yourself as well. I've had so many stories of people where their child just vomited all over them or, spilt. Like I think one of mine, I think Patrick spit like a whole juice over him, and often that's over the parent. So an absolute, a full change of clothes for yourself. What other type things? I mean, like I said about the Cozy Go earlier, it was fantastic for us, but if then if they're not letting you bring them on, it's frustrating. I always would have brought a wee blanket, for the bassinet because hygiene and kind of musty old smell. Panadol, I would say definitely always have Panadol because so often they can either sore throat or ear or whatever. I'm trying to think. As they were that wee bit older, well, even Cora was still, I just had them to have their own bag, so that they could have their water bottle and stuff. They had, their own wee bag with their water bottle, some snacks and their toys. So it just meant then in the baby bag, I just didn't have as much to carry. I mean, Patrick was fit to have his wee, and Cora, it was just on the back of the pram, that kind of way. So it just, and that was before, she didn't have a seat or anything, but it was just really small. But it just meant at least 2 less water bottles to carry, things like that. Trying to think, headphones definitely if they're going to listen to,
because they don't supply kids ones. They don't supply kids ones on the plane, do they?
They do supply kids ones, but I mean, I know I hate the normal ones, and I just don't think, because they're quite small, so I just don't think they're as comfortable. So I've had lovely ones for them over the year. When they're really young, you can get nice soft, nearly like not felt, but like just a lovely soft headphone for them, with dinosaurs and everything else. I haven't never went for the like Bluetooth, cordless ones yet. which I don't know, I'll look maybe the next time. But yeah, I mean, the plug-in's just fine. I know the plain pal I only used it, I think, actually only used it once. I think it was on the way over one of the times, and Rob was actually with me. Um, and it did work great. Patrick slept, he was able to lie out.
Is that one of the
sleep
feet?
Really well.
Is that one of the feet cushion things? Is it or?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and it wasn't. Yeah, I don't think it was a proper plain pal. It was just a cheaper version, I had.
Yeah.
But in saying that, you do have to go to the effort to blow it. Oh no, I did use it. I must have used it on the way back as well, because I remember being on my own, and I blew it up by my mouth, and I had, leaning. Obviously, you don't know if they're going to allow it, and I was leaning down, trying to blow it up, nearly died, and then realized I couldn't get it pushed down. So I was like, oh. Had to let some air out and get it down, and then try, I think you can bring a pump and stuff, but I'm just like, I don't want to be sitting there going squeak, squeak,
It's another thing.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I only used it that one trip, because I just thought, oh, it's another thing to carry, another thing, try and blow up, especially when you're on your own.
Yeah.
And then I have read a lot of them are not allowing it because it blocks the life jacket and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, and that's, like I talked earlier about, like the kids having their own roll on. So, I mean, it didn't really work very well for us at the time. Patrick, he didn't want to ride it. He didn't really want us to pull him on it either. So we ended up carrying it, I ended up carrying it. It's just another thing. So yeah, I think it just depends, things like that. There's a lot of hype kind of about different things, and I suppose you have to kind of know your child, and some things I suppose you have to just try and see how they go. But
I think there's a big market as well, like Ellie's advertising for mums, because first time before flying a long haul, you're so nervous and stressed, and you're like, whatever will make my life easier. So you'll pay, or you might be like, oh, that looks great.
Absolutely.
And sometimes like, okay, that was useless, or I didn't even use that. So that's why it's like sometimes it's nice to hear from other mums. It's like, oh, like, was it worth the money? Or I went probably my thing I always say to people is snacks, and more snacks. Like honestly, I got those like cheap fishing tackle boxes. And I made a snackle box, and I just filled it with all like stuff that wasn't going to make a mess, like, yum food.
Yeah.
Not too much sugar, because I didn't want them like hyper on the plane. But all the like little bits of like, dried Cheerios and Nutri-Grain, and like all the little things like that. And the amount of times I've just whipped that out, and that probably was the thing that kind of kept them entertained the most, like just food.
Yeah, food. No, and that's like I had thought about that, and then I thought, my kids, I actually never tried that, because I just thought, I know they'll be the ones that someone will knock it, and then it will be on the floor, and then that'll be everything gone. Or if I just thought they'll see one thing, they'll be like, oh, I want that, and I don't want that, that kind of way. So I just tended to try and bring like small separate, whether it was raisins in their wee box, or just like Ziploc bags, off like Cheerios and stuff. And like that, you don't want to bring stuff that if they do knock, it's, everywhere type thing. But definitely snacks is important, because like one of the flights actually, Cora, I think it might have been her last one. And fair enough, I hadn't paid for a seat, but they still usually give you, a little bit. They gave her pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
They might have come near the end with the pouch. I'm sure if I'd asked, they would have. But thankfully, she ate kind of most of Patrick's. But I thought, my goodness, she was a baby, but she was like eating plenty.
Yeah.
But and sometimes as well, their food isn't that nice. Even though, as well, that's another thing, to make sure you go online and book kids meals.
Yes.
But even at that, sometimes they're just not that tasty. And I find even things like little breakfast bars, or little things like that you can just kind of pull out. And like you say, though, not things that are full of sugar to send them absolutely hyper.
And because we found that like even some of the kids' meals weren't really kid friendly, like it was kind of like, it was more of like a 12-year-old child, not like a 3-year-old child. I was like,
absolutely,
absolutely.
Yeah. No, I find that too sometimes. But and then obviously, yeah, you need to have lots of things on hand to keep them entertained.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's kind of at different ages, different things. I mean, now Patrick's fine. He is happy with his iPad
Yeah.
and the TV, watching films and stuff.
Yeah.
I feel now actually Cora at this stage would probably be okay, but before when we were traveling, she, wouldn't have looked at the TV at all. So it was just Kmart, all the little cheap toys,
Yeah.
so that I could keep pulling out something every half hour type thing. Oh, look
Yeah.
at this.
Yeah.
One thing that kept her well entertained was the little suction spinny things.
Oh, we loved those. Yeah, they were great.
Yeah. But in saying that, it did keep falling off. So it was like, oh my goodness, So a couple of times I had to say to the person behind me, sorry, it's under, and I wouldn't mind, but it was one of the more expensive brand things. It was like, oh, it should stick, you'd think. And that's even Kmart now. Like, I think they have travel packs and everything, so there is so much more, even from when I first started flying, with Patrick, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, just anything at all to keep them. And like, I know some people say, wrap each thing up. And I'm just like, oh no, look at then there's more mess. There's wrapping paper,
yeah, it's just another thing for mum to pick up. It's same as like someone said, or take these little cars and like the tape that you can get. It's looks like a road. And I was like, well, those little cars are just going to go underneath the seat. I was like, anything like that? I was like, it sounds good, but I'm like, you're just going to lose those kind of things on the plane. Like it was.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we were saying
you're in such a small space, like.
Yeah, we were the same. We just took like lots of little like fidgety things, and pop-it things, or all the
and sensory, like even the little sensory toys with the liquid moves, things like that. Anything that will keep them, occupied for literally only 10-15 minutes, or like even the coloring in type thing, but making sure that it's like those special magic markers, that you're not having to deal with, or even the ones, I think I did bring the ones that you have to put water into, which was grand, but of course you still meant taking the chance of pouring water into it. But yeah, anything like that, and that's easily stored and packed away type thing.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the toddler stage is the hardest. The babies are easy because they'll sit in the bassinet with a couple of baby toys, and then
sleep.
The older kids usually can, like, if they can watch a screen, and I always say that screen time goes out the window on the plane. Like,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah.
No, it is. It's definitely that toddler where they're either starting to crawl or where they're wanting to move, just because they haven't got that understanding. Like, no, the seatbelt light is on, you cannot move. So it's really having those things, and it's those moments usually where you cannot get up. Like, we have to sit here, so we're just having something to keep them entertained.
We had that. I think I can't remember where it was, and we were like delayed, but we were like on the ready to take off, and we were delayed, and it was like 1 hour we were delayed. So I was like, that's an extra hour, and then may have had to be strapped on my knee, and that's when I think I used every single toy and everything in that hour for the whole flight. I was like, right, that's everything gone out the window. And luckily, I think she just ended up happily walking up and down. And I always said I was like, oh, just be ready to walk up and down sometimes with the toddlers. And she was quite happy just doing that, like, and saying hello to people. And then she'd walk back down, and so.
Exactly. And Patrick was never too bad for that, but Cora, definitely. And that's where Rob struggled, because he was embarrassed having to. I was like, nobody cares, nobody's passing any remarks, and that's actually as well. I tend to try and get a window plane, because at least sometimes then the window can be the distraction looking out, or you can stick things to the window, if it is those suction toys, but walking up and down as well, and then standing kind of there where the toilets are with a bit of space, and just looking at people, talking to people, and people people love to see, especially if they're not crying, and people love to see a little child. I think, like you said about like Rob got embarrassed, and it's funny, it's like I think we put so much pressure on ourselves when they're upset and they're crying. We're like, like when you hear a kid upset the first instant, like now as a parent you're like, oh, that poor mum, because it's like, it's like they're kids, like what do you expect, and like most people are pretty understanding. They are, Absolutely. And that's like, I find as well, the flights are actually so noisy, you really can't hear them nearly as loud as what you think it is, when you're sitting there. Fair enough, the people maybe directly in front of you or whatever, but not only that, most people are wearing headphones, or ear muffs or whatever, like things in their ears, because I know even when I'm going to sleep, I would put on my headphones and have
Yeah.
music going,
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
actual plane itself is so noisy.
Yeah.
So things like that, you really have to remember. It's actually, it's not like you're sitting in a quiet room,
Yeah.
and your child's screaming.
In a
It's
fancy
really
in a
different.
fancy restaurant, that's worse. That's so much
Precisely.
worse.
Exactly. Absolutely. And that's, yeah, absolutely.
And did your kids ever get like motion sickness on the plane?
No, thankfully, I don't either. Like I do get travel sickness, but
Yeah.
thankfully on a plane, no, and they've been fine too. I've been very lucky, that they've never actually vomited or anything, because
Yeah.
you do hear so many stories. I know my sister-in-law, like they were going from America, and they were literally just on the flight, and the little one just vomited all over them,
Yeah.
And I suppose, yeah, that's where a lot of excitement and everything can come into. But no, thankfully, never any. I know when Patrick was young, I used to use the like homeopathic Brower.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it is,
Yep.
like the little drops.
Yeah.
And so I remember having them when I first flew with him, and like there was ones for calming and all. So I was feeding him with them. And now I would never travel without having my like essential oils.
Okay.
Like Digestin is a really good one for upset tummies. So I would always make sure to have it, even for myself as well.
Yeah.
If I feel, or if they said anything about a sore tummy, I'd be like rolling it on, just to make sure.
I think as well it helps, like we were saying about the sugar as well. I think that's sometimes I've seen kids where they will eat too much sugar and then obviously they're excited, and that's when I think so it's hard. It's trying to keep it as normal as possible and trying to get them to drink enough, so they don't get dehydrated.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, because I find that for myself. But yeah, and that's, it's great, that they can have their little water bottles and you just say it's for the kids. Or like when I was going with Cora, I had my own and nobody said anything. But if they had, I was just going to say I'm breastfeeding. So,
Yeah.
So back off.
We're the same. No one questioned us with any of that. I took baby food pouches and drinks, and no one questions it as at all. As soon as they look in that, we had a whole bag. We literally same thing. Had like a Woolworths bag, like a reusable bag, just full of like bottles and baby food, like even little in like pouches. And they just look in every airport. Well, like I said, oh, it's for the baby now. Okay, like. But I think there's more awareness around it now. Like my mum was saying when she traveled from the UK when I was a baby to Australia, and she said she had her formula in like the dispensers, and she was in, I can't remember where she was, somewhere where they didn't speak much English, and they took it off her and they were like checking it. Mum's like, please don't take it. Like my baby won't have any food, and she was like really getting upset about it. And I was like, I remember she told me that. I was like, oh, that's like my worst nightmare,
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it does, different airports definitely have, like I remember not pre-kids being in France, going through that way home, and it was Charles de Gaulle or something was the airport.
Oh, yeah.
Never ever again, because like that they wouldn't speak English.
Yeah.
Horrible airport. And then even we once went via like Heathrow. It was Heathrow. And
horrible.
So like and you're kind of like, I've come the whole way here and nothing has exploded in my bag or anything.
Yeah.
So I think I'll be fine for the next half hour to Ireland.
Yeah.
And Patrick had an ear infection at the time, I think, and I'd gotten something from the chemist, but it wasn't like, he took it off me because he was like, no, it's too big or whatever. And I was like, but I need it. Like, it's his medication. He was like, oh, no, just go walk to Boots and buy it. And I'm like, I couldn't, like, because it wasn't. He obviously just assumed it was like Panadol, or Nurofen, but it wasn't. And it was, I don't even know what it was, but I couldn't get it then. And he was actually, that was Christmas. And we were arriving in on New Year's Eve as well.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I just couldn't believe it. I probably should have fought more actually, but at that stage you're so exhausted too.
You just want to get out of there, don't you?
So absolutely. So different airports definitely, you do definitely experience different things.
I think we try and avoid the crazy ones. Like you can obviously get the direct flight now from Perth to Heathrow, and we thought about that. We're like, well, the kids can sleep, but then like obviously because we're going to go to Dublin, we'd have to get another flight, and I will avoid Heathrow at all costs. Like it's just manic,
It's mad. Yeah, it's big. Yeah, I did that flight last on my own, and it was great, just not having to get off.
Yeah, yeah.
And I did wonder like that with the kids, because I mean, that is the hard part, getting, especially when you're on your own, getting your luggage down and getting them all, wrapped up again.
Yeah.
And picking everything up to get off.
Yeah.
So I have kind of thought, and because like that, it's 17 hours, but the kids would probably sleep, for 12 of it.
I know,
so I'm like,
it's
then only got
tempting.
5 hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, then Heathrow. I can't actually even hardly remember what it was like. It was only not even that long ago. What it was like on my own. It didn't seem obviously as crazy when you're on your own, but yeah, the fact that we had definitely, I think if I was English and flying to England, I would chance it to see how it goes with the kids. But yeah, the fact then that we have to then get on another flight I actually went to Belfast then that time, which was handy because I went to the city, which was a really small airport. So that was quite handy, but yeah, I don't know. I'm still not sure if I would chance it with the kids.
I know, it's just like getting off that massive, massive long flight and then to just get in another one. And then because they're the smaller flights, they're probably strict with like luggage and stuff like that. That's what we kind of said. Like if you get one of the Aer Lingus or something like that, or Ryanair, we'd be like, oh God. So.
Well, it was funny actually because mine was British Airways because I was going to Northern Ireland to Belfast, and it was actually like that. My hand luggage, as I was not before I got on it type thing, he was like, sorry, because we have a smaller plane, we actually need to check your hand luggage. So yeah, that would be a thing if you had kids. I was like, yeah, whatever, I didn't need it. Like he gave me a chance. I always travel, or I always stick a little tote bag into my hand luggage for an instance like that where you're overweight or whatever, and you could then just check it. But so I did that, like anything I needed, like just a book or hairbrush or whatever, stuck it into the tote bag. But yeah, if I'd had kids, I thought it would be interesting if I'd had kids. Could I have said no, actually I need this? I think it would have probably been okay, because the flight itself was actually bigger than the flight I had, the plane that I'd gotten off from.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was actually more space. It was crazy. It wasn't a bigger plane, but there was so much more leg room. I was like, how crazy. Like I've literally spent 17 hours felt quite squashed, and that's at my size, my height. And then on the British Airways flight, I was like, oh, definitely have more leg room here.
Oh, that's crazy. And nappy changing. So my thing, I remember I was always like, how did you do that on your own with 2 kids?
I know. Oh, well, so yeah. That was always one of my biggest worries as well, was being able to change the nappy. And yeah, it's fine, but yeah, the time I had the 2 kids, like I said, so Cora was 1 when we first went, and then 1.5, or after that, and she was a bit longer, so she nearly struggled to fit. Like it's tiny, the little change table. So I actually, with her, I put pull-ups on her. So that, she was just wet. I could just do it standing type thing. And find that quite handy. Just having to go to the toilet in general, like even because Patrick, when he was 4, if he had to go to the toilet, like obviously I had to go with him. And I was like, oh, I'm a total germaphobe. I just hate public toilets. And So that stressed me out. So I made sure to put Cora in the carrier. And so she couldn't touch anything if I was bringing him, and then if I was bringing her, it was like, just stand there and do not touch anything type thing. I think I might have left him in the seat once or twice, if he was happy enough, if he was on the iPad or that. I think I did leave him a couple of times if I had to bring Cora, but the pull up nappies, because I could just rip it off, and then I could change her. That was definitely handy. I mean, before they're 1, it's absolutely fine. It's just when they're starting, and you probably noticed that with Maeve, getting that bit longer, it was like, oh, there hardly is any room for you to fit.
And then sometimes, like if it was just like wet or something, I'll be like, do you know what, I'll just do her on my knee, like on the road. Like if it wasn't like a poo or anything, it was just a wee, I'll just do her on the row there.
But then it was fine. But like I said, unless we were on the bassinet row where you couldn't put the arms up, and then she couldn't lay flat, and it was just it was hard. When Maisie was a baby, sometimes I would just do her in that little bassinet, like kids, like quick change there, and it's cleaner usually.
Underneath and everything. That's exactly,
and it's usually cleaner than the change tables. And always take a change table cover, because they're just like public toilets. They're disgusting.
Yeah. And that's, I always always had like Ziploc bags with my nappy, as well as like a vest, because definitely, I don't know if any of mine, I feel like Cora maybe, but I've heard so many stories where children have like pure explosive poos when they're flying.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely. And I would have each in a Ziploc bag. So when I had to go to the toilet, I'd pull out a Ziploc bag along with my, my change table mat and wipes, and then you were able to run off quickly type thing.
Yeah, I had the exact same.
And change your clothes.
Yeah, put them all kind of separate so you could just grab them easily.
Exactly.
And it's like whatever you think you need, like add more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Especially with regards to the bottles and the nappies. And that's what was I going to say there? The wipes. Oh, and the Bond suits are so handy because you've got the zips, and so you as opposed to, especially people, like Irish people, like the Next little sleep suits and stuff, they don't have the zips down the bottom.
Yeah.
Or the buttons. Yeah. So the Bond sleep suits are great for that.
So is there any other bit of advice if there's a mum who's just about to go either traveling solo with her kids flying or even with her partner? Because to be honest, like it's still the mums that kind of, do it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely felt that made no difference if he was there or not.
It's just handy when you nip to the loo, really, and to carry to carry everything. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's handier in the airports, they can carry the stuff. But the only thing was the toilets to have, so you could. But I mean, even that you can manage. Like I sometimes wore them on me while I went to the toilet, or I remember once having to go, and I just like propped Patrick up in the seat so he wouldn't fall, like with neck pillows and cushions. And like the people next to me didn't even speak English, but I was just like, just going to the toilet, you just keep an eye if he falls, catch him. And I mean, I think if you like the air hostesses, if you rang them, but I just hated, I always didn't want to be, a nuisance or whatever. But I suppose the biggest advice would just be to honestly, always expect the worst, and at least then, anything will just be a bonus. It's really like, and thankfully, like my kids definitely are no angels and fairly feisty and hard work at times. But honestly, like I've had worse 24 hours at home going to the shops with them than I have traveling. They're so excited, there's so much for them to look, and people watch, and it's just so everything's so new, even though mine have done it a couple of times. And just preparing them beforehand. Like I always got them some toys, books, watching Peppa and different things, like going on the plane. Definitely don't stress. Like thankfully I've had good experiences. Like I know some people have had terrible times, but have that Panadol with you. Don't be afraid to use it at the first sign of of something going wrong type thing. And people are so good, especially traveling on your own. People will be so helpful, and carry your luggage if need be. Like I've had people, especially that time in Dubai, people like, I'll carry your case, I'll take this, carrying everything for me basically. And even one of the times in the baby row, being beside this young girl and feeling terrible and saying, I'm so sorry, like, and she was delighted to be beside a baby, and she's like, no, I love babies. And she was like, what can I do to help you? Do you need me to get anything out of your bag? So people are so helpful. And the noise, honestly, it's nowhere near as bad as you think. And I know, like, I read so many different things of people like, baby crying the whole flight. I think a lot of them are like maybe American flights where they're, interstate type thing. And so they're smaller planes, and it's obviously a lot louder because like, I don't know how many in the last, I've been here 13, 14 years. I've never had a flight where there's been a child screaming the whole time, or, that you might hear the odd cry. It's never. So I would say definitely don't stress. And that's it as well. If you're stressing, then the child will feel that from you type thing.
Yeah.
So just be confident, and like, you're not there to make friends with people. You don't know anyone. You'll probably never see them again. So don't worry about people around you. You know, worry about yourself and make sure your child's happy, type thing. And yeah, definitely won't be as bad, hopefully.
And that's, I think it's like, that's the thing I tell people, I'm like, yeah, like it can be a bit stressful, but it's not as bad as you make it seem. And it shouldn't put you off doing things and going places. And yeah, like it's true what you said. I've had more stressful 24 hours. And it's true when you think about that, the most stressful or hard times haven't been when I've been flying or traveling with kids.
No. Yeah, absolutely not.
So, yeah, it was
definitely not.
Trip to Bunnings last weekend, I think. So it was.
Yes. Well, completely. The shops usually are usually worse. And that's like the jet lag, that can be one of the hard sides. Not so much going to Ireland, because it's always flying the opposite way. That's the hardest. Definitely on the way back, or like when you get home to Australia, the jet lag is tough for a couple of days, and as well to know that it's not going to last forever. You know, it might just be a couple of nights where, especially when they're younger and they don't understand, there's night times, they're like, oh, time to play. Just know that it will only be a night or two, you know, of being up at 2:30 in the morning for an hour or two, you know. But yeah, again, it's definitely not something to let put you off ever going.
We did with the jet lag, because like the girls went to bed like by the time we got home quite late. So then every night we and the next morning we'd wake them up a little bit earlier, like an hour earlier. And then we just brought that to them, like, even though they were so tired, it was like waking them at 10 a.m. And then the next morning was like 9 a.m. And then bringing bedtime forward an hour. So by night 3 or 4, they were actually back into it. And I found our jet lag was better with the kids, because when you don't have kids, you kind of can just go to bed late and then sleep in the next day if you don't have to go to work. But with kids, you're like, no, I want them back into a routine. And it's sometimes that's the best thing. And that's not as bad. Like, honestly, like when I think of traveling, I don't think of the jet lag. Like, it's not that bad, really.
No, and that's it. And getting them out into the sun, like as soon as you get them up, right, okay, outside quick, and just getting back in. And the last time I think I came back with them, I went straight back to work pretty quick. So they were straight back. Cora was daycare and Patrick would have been kindy.
Yeah.
And I did feel a bit bad for the teachers, but they were totally fine. And like that, it was, they had to adjust, but then that meant the next day they were so tired, they were in bed earlier, and they slept better because they were so tired. So definitely getting back into that routine quickly.
Yes.
Yeah. And for yourself and the kids definitely works better.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on, Jeanette, and sharing all your words of wisdom. So
Oh, no worries. I don't know if anyone would have got anything from it, but yeah, it is. I know how, I was researching for so long every time, before I fly, but definitely it won't. And I see now even, there's a group, I think they're from Melbourne for Ireland, but they are, if you need assistance. So I don't know if you pay, but you can actually post on it and say, well, I'm flying from Perth to Dublin, and so some of them can help, type thing.
That's amazing. I love that, because that's the thing. It's like I think it's so daunting, especially if you're new to the long haul flight. It's so daunting, and it's just not knowing what to expect, isn't it? And then just thinking the worst, but. It's so nice, and all these little things, and like you said, all these people like with the bottles and the luggage, and and it's like you've flown how many times, and and you would fly again, so it hasn't put you off. So
no, definitely not.
Well, thank you so much, Jeanette, and
no worries.
I hope to have you on again talking about other mummy things. So
oh, brilliant! Thanks so much for having me, Lucy.
Thanks, Jeanette. Thanks. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Real Mummy Podcast. Remember, every mum's journey is unique, and you are doing an amazing job. Please be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss out on new episodes released every week. Head over to our website at www.realmummypodcast.com to stay up to date with the latest episodes and dive into our recent blog articles filled with even more mum wisdom and stories. We absolutely love connecting with our listeners, so don't forget to follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Real Mummy Podcast. Join the conversation, share your thoughts, and become part of our supportive mum community. And I'd love to hear from you. Got a topic you want covered? Know a guest you'd love to hear more from? Reach out to us through our website or social media. Your input is invaluable and helps us create the content that matters to you.
Thank you for being part of the Real Mummy podcast family. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind to yourself, and remember, you're never alone on this journey. You've got this.